Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Ed, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. I mean, it's a lot of interesting things going on this week. So
It's October,
okay.
right? You're a
Yeah, it's
big
October.
fan of October. So
Big fan of October, and we got Ngannou making his PFL debut this weekend, which should be interesting. And I mean, before we started recording, I mean, that's why I'm all happy because UFC news comes out so much that I didn't pay it any mind until Matt just pointed it out to me. He was like, "Hey, did you see Kai Asakawa is going to come into making his UFC debut in December?" And I was just like, "What?" So if I seem wired, that's why.
yeah. So before we jump on kind of that news, I definitely want to give props to Brandon Royval. Um, he picked up a big win this past weekend. I didn't pick him to win, and he made me look like a fool. He looked great. Showed why he's the number one ranked contender in that division, and why now with the semi-breaking news for UFC 310, it looks like Royval most likely will face the winner of the recently announced Pantoja Kaya Sakura fight. Throwback to Pride UFC super fight, which we never really got. Kind of throwback to Matt Hughes Sakurai, UFC 34.
That's a great, yeah.
But it's actually UFC 36. But yeah, it's a fun fight. It's a super fight, Ryzen versus UFC. I like that they didn't do the Crow Cop thing and let it risk Asakura losing to anybody. Bring him over. And if his loss is going to be to a champion, it's kind of no harm, no foul. At that point, he can go back to the drawing board, start fighting contenders. He doesn't lose to somebody on the way up the rankings, and then we never get to see this fight. We never get to see him under the bright lights of the UFC. So it's pretty awesome to see it.
Yeah, and they kind of just slipped it in there because if you recall, Asakawa, he made the announcement himself in Japan at a Rising event. I forget which one, that he was going to be in the UFC. And you and I were like, how come we're not seeing anything about this? And they literally just threw that in, recently out of nowhere. Of course, they're downplaying his credentials, but this is definitely like you hit the nail on the head with the comparison. That this is a Ryzen versus UFC fight right there, and they should advertise it as such. But
and I think that they probably will. If there's, I think that they will. It seems like with the headliners, it's the main event headliner is Muhammad and Rachmanov. I think you
had my cup hanging dry in the background.
That's like that's an episode of like Impractical Jokers. But the name value for us is cool because we like these up and coming guys. We like the foreign fighters. It's what, to me, the UFC, I think of like a global map and bringing all these people together
and
to fight.
It's also that thing. We like seeing that little. I don't know. I don't want to say the twist of the knife for a nudge, but if he comes in and runs through, which he probably won't, it'll probably just be a great fight. But if he comes through and runs through Pantoja, you could still say the UFC can still say we have the best fighters in the world, but he didn't necessarily come through your doors. You know what I mean? He's a rising guy.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. It's easier to sell at that point. I think you could already sell it though by just him getting a title fight. I feel like this is the UFC's acknowledging his value and his fighting ability, and it's a little bit out. I lean Pantoja early on just because of the domination we've seen him have, fairly recently, but and his experience in the UFC. I do believe there is the UFC jitters. It seems like a real thing, and everybody I've talked to who's fought in the UFC kind of admitted that it was something that kind of got to them. But I like it. I like that. I like the main event. It's not. This is not a Conor McGregor card. This is not a John Jones. This is not a mega super fightish. World. There's not going to be holding press conferences in Toronto and Dubai to promote it, but it's a deep card. Has a lot of good fights. Cyril Gane versus Volkov gets moved to this card. Evelev and Sterling on the card. Vicente Luque, Nick Diaz gets moved to the card. Dominic Reyes, Anthony Smith. Tatiana Suarez, Jen Jaroba. I mean, you get down to the we're in the prelims now, and even Clay Guida and Chase Hooper's a fun fight. I feel like we saw them just compete recently, and I think they competed in maybe the UFC, one of the grappling tournaments.
The Fight Pass Invitational?
Yeah, or maybe it was Polaris or something, but I feel like I saw those guys compete against each other. So, I mean, I like the card. I mean, Randy Brown's right now is listed as the second fight against Brian Battle, who's been in the news lately after his recent win. So good card, 310. That's a little bit down the line. Obviously, we got 309 coming up in November. The Jones Stiopich as
the New York City card. Yeah, that'll be the one with the. I don't know if that's the I mean, we'd have to check the Kaposa calendar of events, but I don't know if that's the first MMA card using the new unified rules, or the updated ones. But that's definitely going to be front and center, especially it's going to be funny to watch, especially in New York, especially Madison Square Garden with the New York City Athletic Commission and their weird takes on combat sports.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see, but I'm glad to see that rule is coming into place. So some good stuff for the UFC. They also got good fight night this weekend, Pereira and Hernandez. So check that out. UFC's been on a decent little roll right now. Some good fun fights, and I like the direction some of the stuff's going there. So keep that going. Donald Cerrone also announced today he's coming back. That doesn't.
I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel much as long as they don't match him up with a killer or don't top ranked killer. Most people online seem to see Ferguson, and it's all like he fell in your lap. Why don't you Cowboy Ferguson? Ferguson. I mean, it's or maybe save that for the second fight, and that's the double retirement fight or something. Yeah. But yeah, as long as they just give him fights, if he wants to just keep busy, prove that he can still do it. But I don't want to see him in the cage with anybody near the top 15. I'd prefer somebody in probably the 50s. Maybe one of these contender guys or something. Because if you lose to a guy coming off the contender series, that might even be enough to make these guys realize, okay, I don't need that second fight. It's time to hang him up now. So, but it's another exciting fighter who's fun to watch, and it adds name value to what's becoming a deep pool of just some random names for me with all the shuffling of the lower couple hundred on the roster. Seems like it's constant turnover with the Ultimate Fighters and Contender Series and everything else. So with that said, the spotlight this weekend really is on PFL. We love to bash them on this show, but it is a very good card. It's a combination of like 4 cards from across the world that have come together to create this one, with them canceling shows and moving fights from even the San Diego show that went on. Rafian Stotts finds that against Bruno finds himself on this card. But fun card. Look forward to watching it. Middle of the day. I can't imagine the buys in the United States is going to be anything of any notable value.
Yeah, I mean, before we do our picks on the card, we got to go a little bit. I know we did a lot of going in on them last week, but just a little bit, a little bit more. So, because of course it happened after we did last week's episode, right? Sports Business Journal published a piece. It was a Don Davis piece, and he again throwing out the PFL and the UFC as a global MMA duopoly and all the stuff he's saying. And the thing that stuck out to me, and I might have sent this to you, Matt, but just for the listeners he's like, oh, we're gonna make $100 million in revenue reporting for 2024. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, so does that mean the Bellator London and Bellator Chicago cost $50 million a piece? Because you canceled them, and the only reason I could see you saying you're making $100 million in revenue is because you don't have to pay for those shows anymore. Like I know they have to pay venue, but I'm wondering how he's trying to I don't understand how he keeps getting people to invest in it when you're canceling shows, and then you're paying fighters to change fights, and if you need proof of that, it was just before we started recording. MMA Fighting put up the interview with Johnny Eblin, who said not only was he not told why his fight got moved, they paid him to be all right with it, and now he had to go back to camp and do X, Y, and Z, but his family and friends can't come because obviously it's in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, so that messes up some personal stuff for him. So it just seems weird to me. We need a number 2. We did all this last week, but I figure that's all worth mentioning because it's going to be interesting what this, not just the outcome of the fights, but just how they're going to how this makes them any money and how they're going to sell it to fans as we're number 2 after this.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all relative too. I mean, he says 100 million revenue, which is a nice round number, which leads me to believe that it's not the number. And then, well, yeah, but you might bring in 100 million, but if you pay out 102 million, you're down $2 million. So revenue, it's not profit. Revenue might be what they're bringing in, but what are you paying out? What is it costing to pay Ngannou and all this? I mean, you got some pretty cool hype videos and stuff going for the event. That's going to be cheap to make. I mean, not that we're going to do $100 million, but none of it makes any sense. Again, we've said it until I show up to one of their events and I see a packed crowd. I saw it for Masvidal Diaz boxing match. I see it for one championships. Maybe they're giving away tickets, but the PFL, apparently nobody even wants their free tickets if that's the case, or they're just not good at giving them away. I mean, until I can see that in an arena, I'm not going to, I can't be convinced that this is real. I see it with BKFC. I see it with King of the Cage. I see it with local shows where at least they're selling their shows. These guys, I just haven't seen it at all. I mean, and it goes back to, although it was World Series of Fighting at the time, which is their embryonic stage, I guess, however you want to call it, it was in a gym with girls playing volleyball 15 feet away from the cage. So this is not like, I don't, until I see some bright lights and it's really like, it's hard for me to get all that out of my head that, that's what this is. And somehow they managed to wrangle some really good fighters together, and somehow they bought Bellator, although it doesn't sound like they really bought Bellator. They traded some probably worthless stock for Bellator. I don't know. Anyways, we'll get into it, but I just don't. I agree with you in everything you said. I don't know where the heck they're making their money and canceling events left and right. And
yeah.
It's not the sign of a real strong company.
No, not at all.
So, but getting into this event, couple fights that definitely stand out. AJ McKee versus Paul Hughes. Hughes coming over from Cage Warriors. There you go.
There we go.
And then the great H.A. McKee, who, really should have a Bellator tattoo across his chest because he is Mr. One of the Mr. Bellators. So, Hughes is a great prospect, but I mean, talk about getting thrown to the fire. There's another one. There's
Rafael Stotson.
I don't know. I mean, good fights. Campos on the card.
But the fights that jump out at us, obviously, Rafael Stotts versus Breno here, and McKee and Hughes, Johnny Eblin and Fabian Edwards, the brother of Leon Edwards.
Rematch.
It's a rematch, and this was the one that I was referencing that was supposed to be in London. These guys have to shuffle it all together and extend their camps, to do this. So. But it's still a good fight. It's a rematch, and I'm wondering if the way these guys seem to be talking, I don't know what they're going to do with their Bellator brand or contracts, but I would not be surprised if these guys pick up wins, and whatever happens with their next year, that if they're free agents. I mean, I hope the UFC does what they did with Rene de Ridder and just scoop them right up as soon as they're available.
I mean, for some of those names, it would make no sense not to. Hughes, I don't know. Well, Hughes just signed recently, but McKee, but
Eblin.
we'll see. And Eblin.
It's a great he's 15-0 middleweight. Like, dude needs some serious exposure. You want to get that guy right away. Excuse me.
Exactly. Stotts could even get back there and do a bunch. So, but yeah, I guess let's look at the main card then. Like I said, it starts with I show AJ McKee versus Paul Hughes is kicking off the main card. I'm gonna pick AJ McKee to win this fight. Too much experience in my mind. Too many big fights. Too athletic. Too everything. I mean, he has that one loss, but even that one loss, 50% of the crowd doesn't think he lost the fight. So I mean, you're at one judge away from essentially being, on everybody's headlines, but with a one loss throws it off a little bit when slowed him down, I guess I should say, as opposed to being the champion. But I mean, it's a great fight. Could headline any of their events.
Yeah, seriously.
Look forward to it.
It was supposed to headline an event, but and then I mean, because this doesn't look like it matches what you're looking at as far as the lineup, right?
Yeah, that's it. But let's go to the Edwards. Let's go right there to that middleweight title fight rematch. First fight was a grind. Eblin squeaked it out by decision. Initially, when I was going to come on here, I was going to pick him to really regroup and show his dominance over a fighter I believe he's better than. But now you got me thinking about there's a lot on his mind, the extra travel.
Yeah.
So I wonder how that'll throw it off. I'm still going to pick him to win. But I'm going to pick him to win now by decision. I think that Edwards is tough, durable, dangerous, but I'm gonna pick Eblin. Some damn good records on this card, man.
Yeah,
got 15.
Seriously, I'm picking him to win too. But the only thing is, while I do agree with he voiced his frustration, but he also, and it's MMA fighting. I think he spoke with Damon Martin for that over at MMA fighting, and he did kind of say like, because of the last fight, he really wants this fight too. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if he comes, even with everything else going on with the PFL's organizational logistical, nonsense. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes a little stronger. I'm picking him to win. I think he can. I mean, Fabian Edwards is no joke either. So, I mean, I don't disagree with the decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does something to really impress us and pull off a win. But I mean, it is something to note, like you said, the travel and going over there and everything. When you prepare for one thing and you're changing the environment, you don't know how altitude and this and that's going to affect a fighter. So we'll see. And then this one, which is kind of like, I think if you're a hardcore fan, this is the one that you really want to.
It's my favorite fight on the card. The legendary Chris Cyborg,
like long overdue match. Yeah.
Pacheco has the win over Kayla Harrison, and that's big right now. With all of her name in the news, and Cyborg's just an absolute machine. 27-2. Her first loss was in her very first fight ever. Her second loss was to Amanda Nunes, who went on, is one of the GOATs of female MMA. I also think about the times I saw Pacheco lose. You know what I mean? So although she did win, I saw her get beat up pretty good by Kayla Harrison as well. I'm picking Chris Cyborg. I just can't. It doesn't seem like she's lost a step, and if anything, it seems like she's gotten better and smarter as a fighter. Maybe not as violent, but way more, I think, cerebral. And I think that she's. I don't see her getting knocked out. I don't see her getting submitted. So I think that the cards start to go her way then, and she's able to maybe overwhelm Pacheco, especially in a 5-round fight.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And one thing is, talking about the improvements she's made, especially she did a few boxing matches, and I think because of the boxing training, when she does go back and forth between boxing and MMA, I don't want to say she's being overly cautious, but she seems more cautious. if she were to rematch Amanda Nunes, before this fight, I'm saying when she wanted it way back when she was still in the UFC, we probably would have seen a better fight, because I feel like she was a little overconfident in that fight. That might have, been what her downfall was. I don't see that anymore. It looks like she learned from that mistake. And the two of them seem to be cool with each other, amicable, sportsmanship, and all that stuff between these two fighters. And it's a fight they've both wanted for a while. So they both know that this means a lot to either. Pacheco beats Cyborg, the Grand Slam champion who's held titles everywhere she's fought. Then and Pacheco beats her, and she has the win over Harrison. That's Pacheco's stock goes up by a lot. However, if Cyborg, because they're putting on these super fights belts on the line, the 24-pound whatever new belt that they have designed that they were advertising over the weekend. If Cyborg gets to add that to her belt collection, I wouldn't mind if she took that belt and retired, because what else is there left for her to do if she does this? You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Unless she wants to return to the UFC,
yeah.
there really isn't anything else, and that seems like a far-fetched dream at this point.
Yeah.
Good fight though. Good fight. Yeah. Then we move to the main event, the fight that this card is built on, named after lineal
Battle of the Giants,
MMA champion Francis Ngannou versus Renan Ferreira. I see people swaying towards Ferreira lately, and I guess if it's based off of what happened in his boxing match with Joshua, and you think that he's just not going to be there in the head, and that maybe he's a little damaged, I guess that makes sense to me. If you're just looking at it MMA wise, to me it's Ngannou all the way. I mean, he is the world heavyweight champion. He's got wins over obviously greats, and I mean, it's been a while now because of his boxing rendezvous, but I do think that we don't want to forget the domination that he was laying down in the UFC. So, and if this fight took place right after the Tyson Fury fight, I feel like it would be unanimous Francis Ngannou. I just think seeing him get laid out in another sport throws that off, but it might throw you off. So with that said, I'm going to take Ngannou to win by knockout. I'm going to take him to win by first round knockout, devastating fashion. I think that both guys come out swinging. I think he lands the bigger, harder punch based off the fact that he's basically the biggest, hardest puncher that we've ever seen. Yeah. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go with that. I'm not gonna change based off what I saw in that boxing match. Now we'll see if he goes out there and looks slow and sluggish, and like a couple of the lights are not working so great up above, then maybe. But I'm gonna stick with him to win by knockout.
Yeah, I mean the odds. They're not on the PFL website, but I saw them post on their socials some odds over the weekend. And the odds have Ngannou as a favorite and Ferreira as an underdog. Ferreira for sure has knockout power. So if anybody's gonna send Ngannou, at least put him on roller skates, it can be Ferreira. Again, like you said, the damage from the Joshua fight, we'll see how well he's recovered. Based on any exchanges they have, I would imagine the first round is going to be a very slow feeling out round before these guys start throwing any kind of firecrackers at each other. I don't see a first round finish happening. Probably rounds 2 or 3 with these two big boys, but I don't see it going the distance. And seniority and everything else, I tend to lean on the side of the odds makers and your pick. So I can see Ngannou winning too, but I'm not going to be surprised because what's they got his see if there's I mean
he's huge.
Yeah, he's 6'8". He's got the reach advantage. I mean he definitely could touch Ngannou before Ngannou tries to. Ngannou's got to risk getting knocked out just to get close enough to knock him out. So we'll see, man. But it's actually I feel like the odds should be a little closer based on, I can't remember them exactly, but they're probably changing as we speak. And I think Riyadh, because it's in Saudi Arabia, they don't really like to advertise odds publicly too much, but I mean, you could definitely put money on this just because we're not there. It's just there. You can't bet. So, yeah, it's gonna be a fun. It's a small card too, like you said, for the middle of the day. And obviously they have these viewing options with, if you order the pay-per-view, you can listen to Helwani and his friends fucking talk about the fight. But you can you can what I'm saying, like you could literally go on fucking spaces on Twitter and do that with your friends and watch it however way you want to watch it. If you're home to watch it, like you said, early fight card, man. I'm probably going to be out and about when I'll probably be just getting home when Pacheco and Cyborg are walking into the fight.
Well, then you got to head home about 30 minutes earlier so you get to watch England fight.
Yeah. I do want to see that fight too, but it's definitely
we'll see how it goes. PFL's not exactly known for their pacing, and nor is Riyadh season known for their pacing. It might not take place till 8-9 p.m. your time.
Yeah, you got that right. Man.
So depends how many concerts we got and laser shows and ballet performances and everything else that they get going on there. But I don't know, man. Fun fight. DAZN pay-per-view.
That's ESPN Plus, actually.
Or run it's in a
it's like
promotion with them.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that wraps it up. Fans can check out the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, and Old Head Carb on Twitch. Thanks for listening, everyone. Enjoy the fights this weekend and have a good night.
Peace.